Good morning, afternoon, evening. Happy Self-Care Sunday. Today is June 8th. I actually filmed this last night. I had a very restful Saturday. I think it was the weather coming back in again, that high humidity, rain. John and I were just into having a cozy day, staying in bed, watching movies, and then that gets a little bit old for me, and he was still resting, and I got up, and maybe been about 9 o'clock at night by the time I started to rouse, after watching movies all day in bed, and just, having that perfect Sunday, that relaxing Sunday. And so I went into my art room, and I just decided to let the video roll, and I thought, oh, what am I doing? There's this humming in the background from the air conditioner because now the humidity was rolling in. And I thought maybe John would get up, come in, interrupt like he does, or Foofy would need my attention for something, but none of that happened. And surprisingly, when I went to edit this film, there was a hum in the background, but it was kind of like a white noise. It was actually, maybe I was still in my slumber from yesterday. I was actually editing in bed when I got up this morning. It's actually kind of relaxing. I was like, maybe I should not use this for Self-Care Sunday. Maybe I should keep this as like a sort of ASMR video with the rain stick and the small rain stick pen, also that little silver bullet. It was really kind of relaxing. Look how pretty that pen is. And then I thought, well, why not just use it both ways? You could make a copy and then just use this as an ASMR video, quiet time diamond painting. I have my Prince shirt on because I had a big Prince day planned. Again, I tell you guys, this is why I don't plan. Make plans and God laughs. My grandmother used to say that all the time. And she always used to say, God willing. And it's true. But, here I am, diamond painting at night, by myself with Prince Rogers Nelson, born on June 7th. And I was thinking, I had to look it up. I'm like, it doesn't seem sometimes like Prince is gone, because maybe because I'm a fan, and so I always get these videos either on Instagram, or they come across more of my Instagram, and I always get pulled into some kind of interview or commentary or music, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it 10 years that Prince is gone? Doesn't feel like it. And I just think that every year his star just keeps shining brighter. So many things that he said, the music just keeps getting rediscovered by new generations, but so many things that he said are just coming to fruition today. Maybe at the time we didn't think, oh, that's, I don't know. I don't want to say crazy. I hate when people say, oh, he's so crazy. Is he really? I mean, what do you mean by that when you say someone is crazy? Usually, and I would do it myself also. Oh, he's so crazy. But what do you mean by that? Do you mean he's speaking his truth? Do you mean he is fearless? Do you mean that he has the courage to just be himself, just to be like, hey, I'm comfortable, and you want to ask me a question, I'm going to tell you. I'm also remembering last night when I was kind of like channel surfing, and I love these videos on YouTube where um, there's a few people that I follow. One that's coming, that I watch a lot is the Charismatic Voice, and she reviews music that she's never heard before. I find it hard to believe that no one has ever heard of Karen Carpenter, um, or Journey, or Foreigner, or ELO, but I don't know where this girl's from, and I know that she's been trained in opera, and I don't know. Maybe maybe it is that she's never heard this music before, but she's always so surprised, and her mouth will fall open, and she'll be like, oh my god, like, oh, I gotta go back and have to go back and I have to listen to this again. But last night I was listening, a gentleman came across, and I don't think that he is, hearing things for the first time, but he covers a lot of the 80s. And he was covering the haunting voices of women in music. And he had 10 women that he was like, oh, I remember playing this music over and over again, and this song over and over. And he was giving you the male perspective of how sometimes a female can come out with a song and move you so emotionally as a man, and that it's just burned into his brain. And of course he had the Eurythmics and Heart, and let me see who else. I'm trying to think of who else he had, but I was kind of sipping through it because I wanted to know who was on his number one. And his number one was Till Tuesday, and Voices Carry, which Kate Hudson just remade. Did a very nice job, but still, nothing like the original. And I think when you're going to sing a song, don't sing it the way that we all know it, with the hey, hey, in the song. Like, make it your own. And I didn't know that the lead singer was kidnapped by her mother. Nasty divorce. Mother took her to Europe, and eventually her father found her and got her taken away from the mother. And for a long time she didn't talk, and found herself, fast forward, found herself in an abusive relationship. And that's what the song's about. Voices Carry, Till Tuesday. And not being able to use your voice. And it's so funny. I went back to the original video because he was just showing you all clips. I'm like, I don't remember. Did I actually see this video back in the 80s, or was I just singing at the top of my voice? I don't know. I wasn't really an MTV person. Everything seemed weird to me when MTV was born. I was like, what are they really trying to say here? Like, you're ruining this song for me with this goofy video that you've put out that I don't know, like, what does it mean? And so I think maybe that's why I wasn't an MTV fan. But I watched the video, and of course it's a very handsome man. Is he supposed to be a lover? Was he her husband? And she's emerging as this artist, and she's with her band, and he's like, I'm really happy that the band is doing well, but like, what's with this hair? And like, he's removing her jewelry and putting, like, her funky bohemian rocker grungy type of jewelry. He's taking it off of her and he's putting on this expensive jewelry, and it's all about her, being trapped in this relationship and not having a voice. And then finally, of course, she comes into her own at the end when he has her sitting in an opera, and she looks very elegant. And then he kind of notices, he looks at that piece of hair that's tucked behind her ear, maybe, and it's a plaid. It's like a tiny little plaid, and it might even have been like maybe pinkish or bluish or purplish. And he he looks at it while they're sitting in the opera, and he's like, oh, he's rolling his eyes like, oh God, like, when are you going to get over this hobby that you have? And the music is playing in her head, and all of a sudden, she just breaks out with the ending of the song, which is like, just, it is very haunting. And when you finally, and she does stand up in the middle of the opera, and she starts singing her song at the top of her lungs. And then it was interesting because her voice, her name is evading me right now, but it was so interesting at the end of the video. It went to another video where she had just played, still playing. It looked like the same band like 2 weeks ago. And like I said, a new generation, discovering the voice, discovering the music. We had great music in the 80s. I don't know if I was really into 90s music. Not really. I think I kind of left off in the 80s. Love the 70s. Love the 60s. Love even, 30s, 40s. But I think that just going back to Prince. I didn't expect to be talking about this for like 15 minutes here, but here we are. And when I look at his old interviews and what is going on now, especially in the music industry, and how he just walled himself off in Minneapolis and just, I don't want to be bothered with this industry. I just want to create. And even then, even though he was doing his own thing in his studio, making his own music, producing everything, the label just felt like, well, this is our music. We signed a contract. It's a really nasty business. Really nasty. So, happy birthday, Prince. Baby, I'm a Star is my favorite, especially live. Still a star. Always going to be a star. Just gone too soon. Makes me sad. Makes me sad. So I was thinking when I came into the room, I can just set up my phone and I can continue to diamond paint, and I could do a reading from the Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo. And then I thought, well, no, don't press your luck. Even though John went out to the gym, don't press your luck that you're going to diamond paint and make some more diamond painting sounds on top of the ones that you already have, that you're very happy with. Just sit down and begin. Jump in. Just begin. And so I opened up the Book of Awakening, and I was like, I really, again, I didn't sit down with this book this week that much because, well, I can't say that I didn't sit down with the book. I did. Let me see where I left off. I left off on June the 2nd. And did I read no, I didn't. And as I'm flipping through the pages, today is June the 8th, but we were just talking about Prince, and I was, telling you what I did last night, and I said, I think I'm going to read the reading for Prince's birthday, June 7th, yesterday, when I actually did this recording. And here's what I mean, and I say, you can't make this up. When you are just so connected to what is going on around you. And I looked at what June 8th said, and it said, to rest like a tree. And then I went back, and I was like, well, let me see what Prince's birthday said, June 7th. We all spill soup. Waiting to reform the world without discovering one's true self is like trying to cover the world with leather to avoid the pain of walking on stones and thorns. It is much simpler to wear shoes. And that quote under the title is from the Hindu sage Ramana Maharishi. this is just so appropriate. Weren't we just talking about, discovering your true self, being comfortable in your skin? And music is its own language. Sometimes I find it hard to find the words of what it is that I want to say. I'm kind of like reaching, because going back to what I was saying earlier, he's so crazy. Like, that's lazy talk. Like, what do you really mean when you say that? And so sometimes I'm reaching for the right word. And John helps me out a lot with that. When I say things like, I'm so anxious, and he'll be like, what do you mean you're anxious? And I'll be like, well, I have all this stuff to do. And he'll be like, okay, well, you're just eager to get things done. Like, he changes my language a lot. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. And it even settles differently in your body. So one's true self is like trying to cover the world with leather to avoid the pain of walking on stones and thorns. Waiting to reform the world without discovering one's true self is like trying to cover the world with leather to avoid the pain of walking on stones and thorns. Okay, well, I misread that. Wanting to reform the world, not waiting, wanting to reform the world without discovering one's true self is like trying to cover the world with leather to avoid the pain of walking on stones and thorns. It's much simpler to wear shoes. See how one word can change? I kept going back, and I'm like, waiting to reform the world. wanting to change the world. So let's see what this reading is about. Everyone personalizes and projects. Personalizing is mistaking what happens in the world as always having to do with you. An extreme example would be when a child doesn't do her homework and learns the next day that a plane went down in Dallas. She somehow believes that she is responsible. A more common adult version of this, and less extreme, is when your partner comes home sullen and moody, and you immediately believe it is your fault. Well, that immediately brings me back to some great discussions that I had with a neuropsychologist that used to come into a medical center that I used to run in Center City in Philadelphia. And I was managing a office of about 20 doctors, and we did independent medical evaluations. And if you had an accident or an injury and you had a claim with an insurance company, you would come in to see one of our independent doctors to really assess what was going on. I don't know. Now looking back, there's like two sides to that story, but I'm digressing on that. I don't want to get into that tangent, but a more common adult version of this, and less extreme, is when your partner comes home sullen and moody and you immediately believe it's your fault. And I used to have these really great conversations with the neuropsychologists that came in, and how we anchor when we are in a highly emotional state, so extremely sad, depressed, happy. When you're extremely happy, you can recall all those wonderful emotions that you had because you're in a highly emotional state, like when you're in love, and you can remember your lover's cologne, the music that was playing, if you hear that song, immediately all those emotions come back because they anchor in your system. And it's the same way when you're in a very highly emotional relationship that's causing you some trauma. And maybe let's go back to the song, right? Till Tuesday, Hush. She's in a highly emotional relationship where it's abusive, And, you know, the way that she looks at him, the way that he looks at her, that look could be anchored in her nervous system in a way that if anyone were, for any reason, to look at her that way, would immediately bring that emotion back. Okay. So that's what personalizing is, mistaking what happens in the world as always having something to do with you, is about. Projecting is the reverse. It occurs when we place the things that happen in us onto the world around us. Often unknowingly, we attribute our fears and frustrations to others. Rather than accept my own anger, I see you as angry. A generational example would be that if I am afraid of dogs, I protect my children from dogs. And without asking how they feel, keep them away from dogs too. Oh boy. I don't want to say that this makes me angry, but I see so many generational traits in people that they just really never come into their own. They pick up these traits from parents or people that took care of them as children. And it's like, well, this is the way that it's always been done, and then this is the way that it has to be done. And it's so interesting because, again, full circle, I just ran into my friend Rim Cafe Renee, and when I was opening one of my restaurants, I was so frustrated with my partner because things had to be done the way that his grandmother did them. And it's just like, we're not in 1930, I'm in 1997, we have to move on from this. And I remember, telling Renee about it, and I remember him saying, to hell with your grandmother's spoon. And I was like, my partner wasn't there, but I was telling him about it, and he's like, to hell with your grandmother's spoon. He's so right, and I was like, that's the way I feel, like, to hell with the spoon. Your grandmother did things her way. That was her way. That was her time. That's how she did things because that's the way she had to do them. And I'll let you in on another little secret. I kind of racked my brain for years trying to figure out how my grandmother was doing what she was doing. What kind of magic do you have in this kitchen? And really, it was just her secret. You had to use this bowl. You had to use this spoon. Because that was her marker for measurement. I know that this spoon, when I scoop my flour, is 1 cup. I know when I use this bowl, it holds 4 cups of batter. You couldn't just go home and do what your grandmother did and be like, okay, I saw her do this, I saw her do that. Even the smallest increment in measurement. And I think we all found that out when the companies that we bought from all the time, like I made the same, I make an awesome cheesecake. I don't bake too many things well, but I make an awesome cheesecake. People have asked me to make cheesecakes, and I was just like, why is my cheesecake cracking on the top, and it just doesn't seem like it's done or it's overdone? And I happened to check the measurement, and they were playing games, and they were taking 1 ounce off the cream cheese. It wasn't 8 ounces anymore. Now it's like 7, and it changes the whole recipe. So it does make me angry when I see people pass these traits on to their children, and their children grow up and they do the same thing because that's the way it's always been done, and I can't see any other way of doing it because my way is right and your way is wrong. So let's see what else Mark has to say about this. A more subtle example of this is when someone is crying and we say there is no need to be upset because we are uncomfortable with the emotion. So I would suggest that if anyone were to say anything so um, what's the word that I'm reaching? It's not it's not being it's being not compassionate to your feelings, so you know that you could just make yourself feel better by saying, oh, this person is projecting. you know they're placing things that happen to them on me. I'm uncomfortable with this emotion, so please don't be upset because like I can't deal with it. So or if you're in that situation where people say something about any emotion that you're having, like, oh, there's no need to be upset, don't cry about it. Or when we keep asking the other person if they are okay, when it is we who are not, oh my gosh, is everything going to go back to, oh gosh, John and I love this one episode of The Bear. What is Bear? Bear, it might be on Hulu. I love the first season because it was about being in a restaurant where I have spent the last 20 years of my life, and I'll tell you that show was triggering. It caused a lot of anxiety. I would get up and I'd be like, I can't watch this because I feel like I'm back. Talk about anchoring emotions in your nervous system. And watching it, it's a TV show, and I'm watching it, and it's triggering to me about what is going on, dealing with family in your restaurant. Oh, and God, and like dealing with employees and just trying to get your dream off the ground. It's a lot. It's a lot. But the second season, there was an episode called The Seven Fishes. And I believe if you're Italian, you probably saw it. We have this Christmas Eve tradition where we serve the seven fishes. And you get to really know the bear family and the dysfunction. And I think Sugar, Natalie, is the only girl in this family. And she's so in tune with her mother and her emotions and her dysfunction and how abusive she is at times because her own mental state is rocky. And she keeps asking her, are you okay? And they tell her during this crazy dinner, beautiful dinner, that she is preparing for everyone that she has in this big family, Chicago family, that she's preparing this traditional Italian dinner. And you just keep hearing the timer go off in the background. It becomes more and more frenetic as the episode goes on. And they tell Natalie, whatever you do, don't ask Mom if she's okay. Don't ask Mom if she's okay. And she just keeps saying it. Mom, are you okay? And I'm looking at this now. Or when we keep asking the other person if they are okay, when it is we who are not. It's Sugar. It's Natalie. I'm not okay with my mother having this emotion, making all this tension in where everyone else can just ignore her. Like, just walk away, get out of the kitchen. Don't go in there. Don't ask her if she's okay. Don't ask her if she needs any help. Wait. It's like, wait for her to speak to you. Speak when you are spoken to. And really, I'm looking at this from the other side now. It's really Sugar that's not okay, because for as frenetic as that kitchen is, boy, she whipped out a hell of a dinner. That's for sure. The truth is that no one can avoid personalizing or projecting. Well, there's the good news. We all do it. There are only those of us who are aware of it, and those of us who are not. And so what do we say? When you know better, you do better. Because this has been an eye-opening passage here for me on June 7th from the Book of Awakening. But this difference is crucial. Not owning these things can end relationships. Owning them can deepen relationships. And this is a conversation that I have a lot with John as partners. And okay, so those of you know that I was married before, I couldn't have those relationships with I couldn't have those discussions, with my ex, because I think he just wanted to bury a lot of the dysfunction that was in his family. But then he was also a slave to it too. So it was frustrating. And I went into therapy because I was like, I need some coping skills to learn how to deal with this. If I'm going to, the thought of divorce was nowhere in my brain. I was married, and I was going to stay married. And I remember asking him to come, because I did learn some really good coping skills, about, I could have seen, and I think Harville Hendricks, if you get any of his books, he does a lot of work with recognizing these generational traits that you pick up and the way that you deal with people, and that, you kind of like, look at whoever you're in a relationship with as being the parent that you just did not get along with, and you're kind of working out your differences that you couldn't, maybe you didn't get the opportunity to because now that parent is gone, or you just can't because there's that parent that just reduces you down to a child. And, I saw the signs there where sometimes when he would speak to me, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, he's not talking to me, he's talking to his mother, And I kind of like brought this up to him and was like, why don't we do this therapy? Which we did. I did Harville Hendricks with him, and it was, I wasted, like, you had to stay there too. It was like a comprehensive 48-hour therapy session. And of course, when we went, it was limited to 5 couples, and the other couple that was in the room was a business partner of his. So it just wasn't in the stars for this relationship. I'm going to leave it there before I go down that road. But with John, we have a lot of, in fact, last night when I just told you, like, we spent the day in bed and we were just talking about, we were watching movies, and we were both like, really, like, he was like, why am I losing my energy? And I'm like, I think it's just the weather, like, it just felt like a very cozy day to just, I'm like, let's just go with it. That's a phrase that he's adopting from me. Let's just let the day take us. And where I've learned to plan a little bit from him, he's learned to let the day take us. And so, we didn't watch TV the whole time. We love to put on these like little screensavers that have, maybe a little fireplace going. He put some music on from YouTube, and they had a really nice screensaver that went with it. It was like a romantic meal, having a glass of wine. The music was pretty, and we just got to talking, and we do talk about that a lot. Like, John didn't know my dad, but I recognize sometimes John can trigger me because he is so much like my dad. And then I say to myself, no, this is not your dad. This is John. Even if they have similar traits, they are not the same person. My dad was coming from a different time, he's his own individual person. And you have to separate that. You have to look at people as individuals. And so my dad, even though sometimes they do have some of the same traits, of course, completely, totally different issues. I think another thing that I'm aware of, too, is when someone says, I know how you feel. And it just makes me cringe. Because now you're taking your eye off the person that might need you to just be there for them and turning it back onto yourself. When you say, I know, you can't know how I feel. We might have the same kind of situation, but my experience and your experience were totally different. And maybe we could talk about that at another time, and maybe it would be validating to hear some of your story of what I'm going through, but I don't think that you can ever really understand what someone else is going through. But John and I have like a lot of, he's very open because he wants to have a deeper relationship. He had this, being a bachelor for so long, this is a conversation that we had yesterday, being a bachelor for so long, and I certainly had my misconceptions of the kind of life that he was living. I just thought, like, there were times that I would walk Honor into this neighborhood from my neighborhood, and he would be like, you were right in my neighborhood, like down the street. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, why didn't you knock on the door? I'm like, why would I knock on the door? Like, he's like, well, what, you don't knock, you're in my neighborhood, you don't knock on the door and say hello? I'm like, no, I don't want to bother you. He said, well, why would you think it's a bother? I'm like, because like, you're a single guy. Like, you might be entertaining, This was always the after party house, let me tell you. Sometimes it's a little weird to me that I'm living here, because I've been to a few after parties when John has had a gig and we all, went out as friends to support him. And he'd be like, yeah, let's get out of this, wherever he was performing. Let's go back to 2733. That's how he identifies his home. And let's go, and I got beer and wine there, and spend any more money, come to my place. And sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning I'd be like, how do you do this with like neighbors? They're like, oh, my neighbors are here. That was always the inside joke. But yeah, I always thought that was his life. I thought every night was like that as a bachelor. And he was talking about how he thought married life was. How he thought two people that were married had a really deep understanding of each other, and every night was like cuddling in bed, and just always being, dancing on the same moonbeam, and that the relationship was getting just very deeper and more intimate. And I looked at him like he had three heads, and he was like, well, that's what I want from this marriage. I'm like, well, I do too. And we have that. Because we have these discussions. Where am I going? So yes, knowing that you sometimes personalize or project, but being one of the people that are aware of it, and own it, that's the difference between relationships that work and relationships that end. Where am I here? Let's take a little pause here and see what's going on. This is night's rest, if I didn't tell you. This is what I have been moved to do for Summer with the Masters, even though I am not participating in Summer with the Masters. But I do want to get this canvas done, because I cannot have open canvases. But I don't know, is that true? I think I have open canvases because I hit a road bump. And I hit a road bump in this canvas also. I don't know if I've gotten to the part. No, I haven't. I actually got up from the chair. I don't know. I'm not looking at this. I'm reading the book. But there's a point where I get up from the chair, and I went and got my Art Dot book, because I mixed 2 colored drills together again. And I saw myself do it, and the drills were laying right on top. So I got one of my little baby antique spoons that I have, and I was able to skim them off the top and put them where they belong. But a few were still in, a few of them were still mixed in with another color. And so I was just like, hey, I'm not going to sweat it. I'm just going to, when I get to this color, of course, they're next to each other. That's how they got mixed up together. I can't have 2 drill cases out at the same time either. So I'm like, well, I'll just diamond paint 2 symbols together. But I love doing the shade area first. You can actually see the shade area on the canvas. And I believe that this entire canvas is printed in black ink. I don't think that there's anything printed in white ink. I think they're all black ink. So I'm carving out the shade areas here. They should be printed in white ink. They're your shade colors. And then I kind of like, once you fill in your shade colors, then you can just do those. Once you create those little islands, then you can fill in the oceans. So that's what I'm doing there. But the ocean is a diamond drill that I can't find. Even though this canvas sat in my desk drawer with the Elizabeth Ward tray. Now I know I'm not out of all those drills because there's a lot to go. You can see the top of her lap. It's the fabric of the gown. So that's where I am here in this canvas. And I am so hoping to get this done by the end of June because she's heavy. She is, I mean, if my door is a little bit more than 6 feet tall, she covers my door. She covers my entire door downstairs. Yeah, it's a big canvas. So getting back to 2 more paragraphs, short ones. Not owning these things can end relationships. Owning them can only deepen relationships. Humans have spilled soup for eternity, and generations have made excuses saying, it was the earth. The earth shifted. And generations have secretly thought he meant to do it. If you want to save the world, then when you spill the soup, simply say, I'm sorry, I spilled the soup. At the end of each passage for the day, Mark gives us more food for thought by giving us some meditative exercises to do. Sometimes it's writing, sometimes it's taking a walk, sometimes, it is a walking meditation that you do. For this exercise, he asks that you center yourself and bring to mind a recent incident in which you have been the spiller of the soup. What does that mean? Well, it means that you place things that happen to you into the world around you, like when you keep asking the other person if they're okay because it's you that is not okay and you're uncomfortable with the emotion, so you place it on the other person by saying there's no need to be upset. Or did you personalize something? Did you mistake what happened in the world as having something to do with you? Did you maybe have one of those triggers that are in your nervous system, like me watching The Bear and being triggered by something that I'm seeing on TV and not being able to separate and be like, no, this is a TV show. This is not, you're not in your restaurant, because it felt very real to me. Or if your partner comes home with a look on their face and you immediately believe, oh, I did something wrong. So it may be that belief turns into the relationship deteriorating because you think he meant to do it. He or she meant to do it, or that look does belong to me. So bring to mind a recent incident in which you have been the spiller of the soup. I think if you're diamond painting right now, along with me, or maybe you're just, having some coffee, relaxing, whatever it is that you're doing. But I like these meditative moments, me alone in my room, diamond painting, and it gives me things to think about. This is a good time to think of when you've been the spiller of the soup. Breathe clearly and see with accuracy what you did and how it affected others. So did you place the blame where it didn't belong because you personalized it and made it about you? Did you project where we place things onto another person? And how did it affect, in either of those situations, the people around you? Because it does have a ripple effect. It does, because that person that you affected needs to have an outlet, and if they can't talk to you, they're going to talk to somebody else, and it just keeps rippling outward. So maybe now you're aware, and if you are continuing to I think now that you're aware, you do better, right? You can stop yourself and say, oh, I know what this is. Let me go back to that chapter. But you might want to confide in your partner and your loved one or whoever is being affected by you that, hey, I'm aware that this really does not have anything to do with you, and I'm projecting or personalizing this, and just stop me, remind me, because sometimes we have those moments of like craziness, because it is a trigger, and you have been hurt, and you don't want to hurt other people. You have to, you need someone to just say, put their hand up and like a stop sign, and be like, wait a minute, we talked about this. And you can take a break. Taking a break is a great thing. Catching your breath. And maybe sometimes if you can't find your words, like me, one of the things that John said to me when we were first dating, because he's just, words just flow with him, where I'm more pensive and think about things. We had a journal. We had a composition book that we used to leave on the dinner table, because he would leave early in the morning for work, and he would leave me a note in that book. And I would get up in the morning, have my coffee, and I would sit down and I would read it, and I would leave him a note back that he could have either read when he came home from work or in the next morning. That was our communication book, we used to call it. It was it was a very retro way of texting. But sometimes we text too. Sometimes it's just like, I can't deal with this right now. And I'll go in my room and we'll text each other, and it gives us space to catch our breath. And really, not only are you thinking about what you want to say, you're actually seeing what you're saying. And you can go back and revise anything that once you've said it and you get it out of your system, you still didn't affect the other person. You could go back and be like, I really don't want to say that. And you could take it out. So texting is another way, another tool that we use to strengthen our relationship. Breathe gently and own with kindness your humanness. Yeah, absolutely. And if need be, make amends. Sometimes it doesn't matter that you see what you're writing. Sometimes you're in just such a fit of anger that, or maybe not anger. I don't ever really think that it's like a release that you need. And then you get it because you don't know how to. Is it sitting with yourself? Sometimes people are afraid to sit with themselves. As a yoga teacher, I mean, when people would go into Shavasana, some people just can't lay flat. They can't lay flat on their back and relax. Others are just like, oh God, I can't wait for Shavasana. And they lay down and they're like, ah. And I can literally see their body collapsing down into the mat, collapsing down into letting all the work that they did marinate into their system. And then there are others that I see where the energy is rising, the body's twitching, the hands are moving. I had one girl that would always crack her knuckles, and they can't lay down. And so I would go over and gently put them in a position where I would get a bolster and put a couple blocks underneath the bolster and raise them up to give them that feeling like they're not going to jump out of their body. And I think that sometimes that's the way it is when you want to say something. It's just like, oh, I got to get this out of my body. I got to just like, oh, it's just going to jump out of me. And so if you have to make amends, and maybe even open it up to this discussion and say, listen, I learned something today. I learned that some things, emotions I'm projecting, and some, emotions I'm personalizing, and it really doesn't have anything to do with you. But somehow I chose you. I chose you for a reason so that I can, and we can, together work through these things that I have and you have. And let me tell you, it really does deepen your relationship, because now John and I will just laugh at things that happen. He'll say something, I'll be like, do I look like your mother? Because I think you're talking to Rita right now. But he says I'm a lot like his dad too. When I first met his mom, and everyone feared his mom. My husband will tell you, when my mother walked down the street, it was like her parting the Red Sea. He said grown men ran when she walked down the street. She knew who she was, and she didn't put up with BS. And I think that women like her, like I see my son sometimes roll his eyes, and he'll be like, my son has brought a few women home, and I told him to please stop it. Unless you are absolutely serious about the girl that you're with, don't bring anyone home anymore, because, you're my son, and I love you very much, but I'm your mother, and things are just a certain way to me, and it's not generational. I'm very aware of that. But I think that there's a laziness with his generation also. And so, he'll roll his eyes at me when I say something, but in the end, he'll tell me, you were right. You were right. I just didn't want to say it. So, yeah. I think too, that if you can have these conversations with, especially your partner, it really does, like I said, deepen the relationship. John and I just, kind of crack up, and then we talk about it. And then I'm like, well, what was it that I did or said that made you have that kind of reaction? Because like I said, I knew his mom, and I knew her to be a very strong woman. She knew her mind, and um, I think the first time I met her, I found her to be a little bit defensive. I didn't see like this woman that was going to like lay down the law with me, because I think we were both like on the same. We looked at things the same way, and I think where she was trying to, tell me like nobody's gonna boss me around, you know. And I just kind of looked, I just kind of leaned back and I looked at her and I had like this kind of like internal chuckle. I'm like, oh my God, we are so much alike. And we became besties. And John, always says to me, one of the greatest joys I had in my life was that you and Rita really got to be good friends. You were just so close. And we were. We were. She would say to me, what are we snacking on tonight? I'm like, well, I got this, I got that, I got Cheetos. Yeah, give me them orange sticks. I want my fingers to be orange, she would say. And we had a blast. It was so fun to be with her and to really love the woman that brought the man into my life. Even my previous mother-in-law, my ex-husband's mother, another strong-minded woman. And then like everybody was like, oh my God, she's so difficult. Why? Why is she difficult? Because she knows her mind? Because you're not going to disrespect her in her home? Because she has not her way of doing things, or not, I don't want to say like, this is right and this is wrong, but she was very, solid in where she stood. All these women, myself included, were virtuous women. We're very solid in morals and ethics, and sometimes people can't be around that. It makes them uncomfortable, and so they're projecting how they feel onto us. You make me uncomfortable. I can't be around you. You're making me uncomfortable with, not bending to my will of how I want things to be. It's not my problem. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. It's you. Are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I think that this was a really, really good chapter. Thank you, Prince. Thank you. He's still blessing us. Prince Rogers Nelson, still blessing us. And talk about a spiritual being. How he shifted people's consciousness when he spoke. What a light. What a bright light. I had my trippy glasses that I take out every June 7th to wear, the ones with the third eye. I don't know. I might just wear them more often. And what are you doing today? What did you receive from this reading? If anything, let's open up the discussion. And while I'm talking about discussions, I did spend part of my day not just coming into my room and diamond painting right after this. And it was in the wee hours of the morning because I really had a relaxing day on Saturday. But after I was done with this, I decided from our live, which was filled with so much energy and brainstorming. A few of you texted me right after. A few of you sent me emails with more information about destashing. Ange showed up in my email. We all miss Ange. Hi, Ange. But Ange's in Australia. And she was listening to the live while she's like, sometimes I listen to you at night before I go to sleep, which is such, oh, I love that. I love that. What an honor. Thank you. And so she sent me some information on destashing groups. Where was I going with this? Oh, so we also talked about, because we're reading Jaws, and maybe when John comes home, being that I'm done with my self-care Sunday, he'll want to read chapter 4. The subscribers have chapter 2. They get a chapter every Sunday. The members get a chapter. I think this will be your 3rd for this week if he comes in, and he wants to read. You'll be getting chapter 4, and I'm so curious to see what chapter 4 is about. So we were talking about, I had said during the live, and John was actually in my art room, and he was sitting on the sofa, he was reading. I said, I'm so trying not to read the book, not to read the book. I'm so trying not to watch the movie. And John said, we should, or someone said in the chat, we should watch the movie together. And John was like, that's a great idea. We should watch the movie together. I think that's how it played out. And Gabrielle said, yeah, Ditsy did that on her Discord. We all watched Wizard of Oz. And so I set up my Discord after I was done with this filming. I set up my Discord. It was really rather easy. I have some things that I want to add to it, but I'll be talking to my members tomorrow because it's Member Monday. And we'll be chatting about how this I don't think it's published yet. We're going to be chatting about how this Discord is going to roll out. But I have a community section. I have a chat section. I have a section that's called Whip Wednesday, where you can show me what you're working on for Whip Wednesday. I have a Self-Care Sunday section, which is a voice channel where after Self-Care Sunday, we can roll right into a Discord and have a chat. I have, what else do I have? I have a coffee section featuring Dose, where we can put all those recipes that you guys are always asking for. Or you can tell me how you're doing with your Dose. If you don't know that, some of us are doing the mushroom coffee. And I have some recipes that I do with my Dose. I have my cousin Mikey's original recipe, that he's the guy that turned me on to the Dose. I was looking at it for a while, and when I was staying with him in Florida, he was doing it. I'm like, Mikey, how do you like it? He's like, I love it. And he's a pharmaceutical doctor, and so I'm taking his advice, and I love it. I found that it slows me down when the world around me is going crazy. I'm not looking to jump into the craziness. I just stand back and watch now. So that's one of the effects that I've learned from being on my Dose. What else is in the chat? Well, there's a welcome, and there's the general rules, and then there's a section on how to use the platform, and then there's a section where you can pick your icon. I believe I got that settled yesterday. I'm not really sure, because there's a bot that kind of helps you out with all that. And then I even have a section for journaling and my mixed media and other things that I do. Should you be interested, that's where I'm going to put my stuff at. Some people are interested, some are not, and I guess if I do see an increase in interest there, I might put it on my Elisa Maria designs and give Elisa Maria something more to design other than diamond paintings. I'd have designed my own diamond painting journals. I design my own journals that I write in, and again, it goes back to a composition book like John and I use to communicate, which goes back to Journal to the Self by Kathleen Abrams, a course that I took with her at the New York Open Center, which really turned me into a writer. That and The Artist Way. So maybe I'll put those books in there. If you're curious, I love Kathleen Abrams' book. It's a tiny little book, again, called Journal to the Self, and it has writing exercises if you think that you're not a writer like I did. Thank you to my previous boss, Anna Chang, who was my boss at and the proprietress of the ink pad. And she said, Elisa, please come with me to this to the New York Open Center and take this seminar with me. I love words. And she got me to love words. And so I'm paying it forward to you guys. The exercises are so fun to do. My favorite is the 100, where you sit and you make a list of 100 things that you like about whatever. And if you think that you can't write 100 things about stuff, when you start and sit down and center yourself and start to write, you can write the same thing over and over again. But when you start to write 100 things, it's the same thing like the artist way, where we siphon off what's on the top of our brain and we get down to business. Here I am, saying goodbye and taking a moment, a pause with Prince.